Just going to run this dog to see if we can find any type of human remains that are left.
Listen to Where Secrets Go to Die, The Disappearance of Derek Hennigan. From the Detroit Free Press, a new podcast set in the woods of Michigan's Upper Peninsula. Available on Apple, Spotify, Freep.com, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Now, the BuckeyeXtra podcast with Rob Aller, Bill Rabinowitz, and Joey Kaufman from the Columbus Dispatch.
Hey everyone, it's Joey Kaufman here with Bill Rabinowitz, a two-man edition of the BuckeyeXtra football podcast. Thursday, April 11th, previewing the Ohio State football spring game on Saturday to close the book on spring practice. This will be our best window or our longest window into how the Buckeyes have looked this spring. And certainly the positions of note is quarterback, linebacker, a few things we can get into and all that. But spring ball, it always goes fast. It's been a month here.
Yeah, and this spring game will be a little interesting because for the first time, Fox is broadcasting this nationally. It's kind of, used to be the Big Ten Network and kind of a lower, smaller scale thing. And they're kind of pulling out all the stops for this. Don't have Gus Johnson, no Gus. Oh, wouldn't it be hilarious to have Gus like go crazy over a spring gameplay? That'd be kind of fun. But I don't know that that's the best forum for Gus. So Fox will be here, but it's a big audience, obviously, for Ohio State. Kind of speaks to the brand that Ohio State is. And it's going to be an intriguing game. I talked to Joel Klatt from Fox, and he said there are like 4 or 5 storylines that by itself would be compelling enough. And the number one thing is the quarterback. And we might as well get into that right now. Yeah, Will Howard, who
it's not bury the lead there.
Yeah, I mean, Will Howard came from Kansas State as a grad transfer. The expectation was he would win the job and that this would be his job, and end of story. I don't think it's quite worked out that way. It's premature, way premature to say that he's not going to be the starter. I think he probably still will be the starter. But Devin Brown has played well in the spring. And you have this freshman, Julian Sayin, who is turned heads. You also have Lincoln Kienholz and Aaron Nolan. We haven't really heard much about them, not as much at least. But Aaron Nolan's a true freshman. It's really the surprise is that Julian Sayin's even in the conversation. That's the surprise. But I think it is important for Will Howard to play well and look like he's comfortable in the offense. He doesn't have to be great, but he can't be like bad. If he's bad, then that's a concern. And I'm curious to see how Devin Brown is. I mean, he's certainly got ability, but even now when Ryan Day talks about him, you hear the word consistency a lot. You hear he does a lot of good things, but we want to basically see it time and time again. So that's going to be a test for him.
It's, I think, a lot more compelling than this stage a year ago because that's our dog right there. She agrees.
That's his dog, not my dog would never bark during a podcast because my dog has manners.
Well, she was just trying to back me up and emphasize my point about the spring game because if you remember last year, Devin Brown broke his pinky and couldn't play in the spring game. So this quarterback competition that we had followed all spring, Devin Brown, Kyle McCord, had this anticlimactic finish to spring camp. And instead it was Kyle McCord leading one offense against Tristan Gebbia leading the other offense. And you knew he wasn't really a factor in the quarterback competition. So it was a postponement of what ended up being a very tight quarterback competition. In this case, you get to see Devin Brown and Will Howard slinging around and Julian Sayin, who's in the mix as well. So I think the entertainment, the factor, the intrigue factor is a little higher for this year's spring game, just because you get to see more guys who are going neck and neck.
Yeah, and then one of the other big storylines is how do the new guys look? I mean, how does Quinshon Judkins look? How does Caleb Downs look? I mean, we've heard great things, especially about Downs, and seen good things from him. The offensive line is that may be the most significant story because if the offensive line is not significantly better than last year, Ohio State's not going to reach its goals. I think that it will be better. I think that the extra year of experience for some of these guys, I think Seth McLaughlin coming from Alabama, who could potentially solidify the center position if he does beat out Carson Hinzman. Josh Fryer, Josh Simmons, the tackles having an extra year of experience under the belt, they should be better. But they got to prove it. And we'll see, because this is a really good defense they're going against. I don't think they're going to go against a better defense all season. And so, that'll be quite telling.
Just going to run this dog to see if we can find any type of human remains that are left.
Listen to Where Secrets Go to Die, The Disappearance of Derek Hennigan. From the Detroit Free Press, a new podcast set in the woods of Michigan's Upper Peninsula. Available on Apple, Spotify, Freep.com, or wherever you get your podcasts.
No, I think the other thing with the spring game is always hard to, when you're previewing it, is you don't know how long guys are actually going to play.
Right.
In this scrimmage, and to what extent. Well, I'm sure we'll see guys like Caleb Downs and Quinshon Judkins and then McLaughlin, but I don't know how long they'll actually play before they start rotating and going through the bench. But we'll see them for a little bit at least. The format's going to be first team offense, first team defense, sort of what they've done in the past with stuff. So it's not like I guess a case where they split the team up, which is probably better for having some continuity and trying to accomplish something. Do you think we can get into, I guess, larger big picture questions about spring ball maybe next week as we look back on, but it feels in some ways deja vu-y to me. You compare it to last year where Ryan Day has a press conference on Wednesday. He talks about the quarterback competition, looking for some separation, need to see more consistency. It feels like a lot of the same buzzwords that we heard a year ago. And maybe that sort of should have been expected all along, because Will Howard was certainly an experienced, accomplished quarterback at Kansas State, but he's only been here for a few months learning a new system. I think it was probably unrealistic to expect him to just walk in through the doors of the Woody Hayes Athletic Center and win the job in 2 months. So it certainly feels much more of a legit quarterback competition that's going to go past spring practice, which they've all done really in Ryan Day's tenure. We haven't really seen anything wrapped up by the end of spring, but it seems like that's what we're going to have here. Certainly is the big picture, the biggest question mark they have right now.
Well, he said the other day or yesterday when we talked to when he had his press conference that he's not ready to name a starter, and I can't imagine that anything that he sees on Saturday is going to cement that in his mind. I don't think. First of all, just from if you almost want to be cynical about it, it doesn't make sense for him to name a quarterback, because if he names one, the others could leave, right? Devin Brown has been steadfast in saying he's not going anywhere. But if Ryan Day were to come out and announce Will Howard's my guy, that might change the equation. Same thing, I guess, if he announced Devin Brown to be the starter. So he's, there's no reason to do it. I think that Devin Brown, to his credit, has put himself in the race. We thought that he obviously had a chance to stake his claim at the Cotton Bowl. That didn't happen. And he's healthy now and he's looked good. Look, in the practice that we saw a couple weeks ago, he was clearly the better quarterback that day. So what does that mean? It's one day of practice, but it shows that he is capable of being a high-level quarterback. And can he do it in a game? That's the big test. Will Howard has done it in a game. He's played well in big games. He's a smart guy. He's a big guy. He's a tough guy. There are lots of things to like about Will Howard. Is he an elite passer? I'm not sure that he's an elite passer, but he also gives you a run element that Devin Brown gives you. I'm also curious. I am very curious to see how Julian Sand looks. Does he look good in a setting in the Horseshoe with a national TV audience and all that kind of stuff? I'm curious, does Aaron Noland look like he belongs? We all kind of dismiss Lincoln Kienholz right after the Cotton Bowl performance, when Day even said yesterday that's not his fault. He wasn't ready for that, and he was thrust into that before he was ready. They've liked him quite a bit. He doesn't get talked about much, but he's in the mix too.
It's interesting the way in which Ryan Day has talked about Julian Sain in particular, because he is always, I think, when it's come to discussing quarterbacks, been really hard on that position. He's been a tough grader. It's been his position. I mean, he was really in effect the quarterbacks coach the last few years, and he was a lot more willing to lob praise at Julian Sain and really sort of talk him up in a way which he hasn't always done with freshman quarterbacks, which could mean two things. I mean, Julian Sain has really impressed a tough grader in Ryan Day, who is not an easy guy to impress as far as evaluating quarterbacks. Or it's also a reflection of Ryan Day's role at Ohio State has changed in some ways, where he has given Chip Kelly a lot more control of that position group than he did with Corey Dennis, and he is no longer the by all practical accounts the quarterback coach. That now Chip Kelly, he's more of a CEO now, and so is he going to maybe approach or handle that position differently and talk about those guys as he would any other position group? I don't know quite the answer to that, but that's sort of the things I'm rattling around in my brain right now.
Or it could be that he just wasn't all that enamored with, especially last year, with the options he had. I mean, that's right. I mean,
I don't think he was ever quite this flowery with C.J. Stroud's.
Not this early.
No, but the thing that also complicates that to a degree was something happened in spring practice 2020. I don't know if you remember what that was.
What happened that year, Joey? Did something grind to a halt suddenly?
Daily life, I think, was the daily life has grinded to a halt was sort of the phrase of choosing in March of 2020. So they only had CJ didn't get much of spring ball, and so we didn't really sort of monitor the development of CJ Stroud, Jack Miller, the two freshman quarterbacks that year, the same way we were doing with Julian Sain and Aaron Nolan, because they were not practicing at Ohio State in March, April, May. And then you had, I guess, Devin Brown as a freshman in 22. But this I think Sain and Nolan are as heralded as a recruits as they probably had since CJ.
Yeah, that's true. And let's talk about, I guess, the offensive line, which is the next biggest question on the team. I think that Day is more comfortable with that unit right now than he was a year ago. I think Josh Simmons, who didn't arrive until after spring practice last year and got thrust into the job, and that's almost an impossible task to go from starting at right tackle at San Diego State to starting at left tackle for Ohio State without having bumps in the road. I mean, that's just not realistic. And he did, but he got better as the year went on, and they love his ability, and it's just a matter of kind of becoming more consistent. Josh Fryer at times looked overmatched at right tackle last year. At times he played pretty well. He's changed his body some, and Day has been very happy with how he looks. He's happy with Carson Hinsman this year, which he was not happy with Carson Hinsman last year, the center. And so competition brings out the best in you, right? And so Seth McLaughlin being there is certainly competition. I would expect in the end that McLaughlin will be the starter, but it's a competition. And then at right guard, Luke Montgomery was one of my 5 offensive players to watch. If he can play well on Saturday and Ohio State feels, okay, there's our right guard, then that pretty much solidifies the line. You don't have to move Josh Fryer inside. If you move Josh Fryer inside, then that means that Tegra Shabola might play right tackle. Montgomery could too, but I think if Montgomery starts, it's going to be this year at right guard. So I think that there's a lot riding on how the offensive line plays on Saturday.
Yeah, you wrote about Josh Simmons just the other week about his comfort level at left tackle, which to me is significant. If they feel they can get much better play out of the left tackle and spot and right tackle spot, because that was a big issue last year for them in pass protection. I think for people who are obviously trying to maybe get their first look at Ohio State, because unless you were a student at the Student Appreciation Day practice, you haven't seen the Buckeyes at all this spring. The other thing to probably keep an eye on is the linebacker grouping. Cody Simon, we know, is going to be the probable starter as the middle linebacker, but that weak side linebacker spot to replace Steel Chambers, I think, is an interesting mix. You have Sonny Styles, who has experience. He started at safety last year, but he is now playing linebacker. So how does he look? A little more in the box. and a CJ Hicks ready to come along there as well. That position group is suddenly, I think, maybe a little more talented than was advertised or thought going into camp, because you have some guys behind them like Gabe Powers and Arvell Reese, but especially Styles and Hicks, I think, are an interesting sort of battle right there.
And both those guys are 5-star guys, very different kind of players. I think that the Jim Knowles has talked about Hicks as more of a blitzer, and Styles is more of a he's I'm not sure what you call Sonny Styles. I think he's anything and everything. He can play. I mean, you could line up Sonny Styles as a edge rusher, right? And you could line him up at safety. So I think he's kind of this wild card. Again, with him, I've said it before. I don't know. It doesn't matter what you call him in terms of position. He's just going to be a factor on the field. They're going to move around like a chess piece, and depending on the situations, and basically try to get mismatches, because he's too big for certain people to block, and he's too fast for others. So I think that's a real weapon. I'm also really curious in the back end to see how Caleb Downs looks. I mean, I know he's going to look really good, because he is really good, but just kind of see from a bird's eye view what he looks like, what a difference he makes, because he's special. I mean, of all the transfers they got, and they got some really good ones, I think he's the best. He led Alabama in tackles as a freshman. It's kind of unheard of. So, and Josh Pryor played well last year. It wasn't like that safety spot was a weakness, but Downs is an All-American caliber player. And I don't know how much we're going to see of Lathan Ransom on Saturday. Honestly, I'd be surprised if we saw him at all. I mean, he's still coming back from that injury. I mean, there's just no reason to rush him back. But when you factor that he and Lathan Ransom will be the safeties this year, boy, that's a pretty good group. And you have great cornerbacks in Denzel Burke and Davis Igbinosun and Jordan Hancock. The front four has got Jack Sawyer, JT Tuimoloau, Tyleik Williams, Ty Hamilton. I'm curious to see how some of those backup linemen look, because they've been talked up quite a bit this spring. They're going to get lots of chances. I can't imagine that Tuimoloau and Sawyer are going to play a lot on Saturday. So this will be a chance for the Caden Currys of the world, Mitchell Beltons of the world to really make an impression. And they're talented enough to do that.
Yeah, and they've mentioned guys like Jason Moore, who's he's probably made one of the bigger jumps. Larry Johnson said a few weeks ago, and is somebody they've sort of envisioned as the 3-technique tackle, which is what Mike Hall played, and losing him, there's some snaps to be had there. I think the defensive line in general, they seem to feel pretty good about the depth they have at that position group, which you lose, at least Mike Hall, you need some guys to come along in the interior. So Caden McDonald, Hero Canoe, Jason Moore, those are some of the guys they've looked at there for those spots. It seems like they have more questions, probably the depth in the back end than the depth in the front seven. At least that's how it's seen. But some of the guys who would ordinarily be playing safety, like Lathan Ransom, Lake Hartford, aren't available this spring.
Right, right. I don't know. I mean, it'll be an interesting spring game. I mean, it's a scrimmage, obviously, but it'll be interesting. I mean, I just want to see some of these guys for the first time in a real game-like setting. The practice that we could watch a couple of weeks ago was nice, but the view wasn't great around the field. You don't have a great view, and it wasn't the same as what the spring game is going to be. So, I think they will have a better sense of who the quarterback might be, what just the feel of the team this year. I mean, like you said last year, when Devin Brown broke his finger and that essentially paused the quarterback competition, it just kind of left like a feeling of deflation a little bit going into the spring game, because you just, Kyle McCord, even if he threw for a gazillion yards and looked great, he wasn't going to be declared the winner because the other guy wasn't in the starting gate. And so this year they're all going to play, and I think they're going to try to make it so that they play comparable talent on both sides of the ball. So it's not kind of rigged in the sense of one guy's playing with good players and then one guy's not, or starters and not. So I'm curious. I mean, look, Devin Brown has talent, but he's also been prone to, first of all, injury, but also mistakes. I mean, that's what cost him the chance to start last year. He had the bad scrimmage at the end of summer, and that really turned the tables on that competition. can he go out there on Saturday and make really good throws and avoid the bad ones? That's the key. We know he's got talent. We know he can run. We know that enough, know enough about him to say that. But can he avoid the mistakes? And that defense, assuming he goes against the starters, is going to test him that way. So it's going to be a great challenge.
Yeah, it's, I think, always more compelling when you have a genuine quarterback competition intrigue. I think it just adds to the level of competitiveness. It makes it a more competitive setting. We didn't get to see that last year. So the intrigue factor goes up. And I don't think anybody's going to be declared the winner, but you could start to see things take shape. The other thing, too, I think this is also just the first window into how Ohio State might look under Chip Kelly offensively. And I think spring game can be very vanilla, so I wouldn't necessarily hold out hope to see a bunch of different stuff. And they're not really changing a ton offensively. They are running the same offense to a great degree because Ryan Day learned from Chip Kelly. Tonight, we're recording this on Thursday, and tonight's the coaches clinic, and Chip Kelly's scheduled to give a talk about the stretch run game. Well, Ohio State's run a lot of stretch run plays under Ryan Day, but there's certainly probably some unique things Chip does, and they've talked about some new plays he's put in with the run game. I wouldn't expect to see some of that, but you're always looking for maybe a little bit of a different flavor or panache or some sort of like spin on things. And again, spring game on a nationally televised format is probably not the place they want to put a bunch of stuff out there. But
no, they're not going to open up the playbook and show everyone what they got. That's for sure. But you'll still be able to say, see certain things. Look, teams scout in the offseason. It's not like they don't know what Ohio State's going to try to run. Right. That stuff's always overblown. They can't reveal too much. Mm-hmm. They're watching. They know everything. But the weather is supposed to be nice. Just now, it's high of 62 and sunny. So really nice weather for the spring game. I mean, every other day it's raining now. It's going to rain tomorrow. Might rain Sunday. So Ohio State caught a break. They're expecting. I talked to Brett Scarborough, their ticket guy. They've sold. What was the number? What was the number, Joey?
Day said during his press conference on Wednesday that they'd sold north of 50,000.
56,000 as of Thursday afternoon. 56,000. Expecting 78,000 to be sold, and that does not include little kids under 5 or under 6 who are not charged, or students who are not charged. So, if you figure 78,000 plus little kids and students, maybe you're talking about triple figures. I don't know. Maybe that.
Hey, how are you doing this back of the envelope math?
78. If he's expecting 78,000 to be sold, but okay. that doesn't include students.
Okay,
and that doesn't include little kids. So if parents bring their 5-year-old kid, that 5-year-old doesn't count as one of the 78,000, and students obviously don't count. So if a ton of students show up, maybe you're getting close to that 100,000 figure. I mean, they've had that before. It's been a while, and that's crazy.
They've had the 2016 spring game hit triple digit. And
that is crazy.
Yeah,
that's crazy. But the weather's going to be nice. You get a chance to see what should be a really good team. I mean, when I talked to Joel Klatt and asked him, what do you think? I mean, what do you think about this team? He said, I think they and Georgia are the top 2 teams in the country. I'm not sure which is which. He actually is leaning toward Ohio State, but Ohio State is, we know what's happened the last 3 years, losing to Michigan, falling short of championships. They've loaded up for this run. And so there's a level of anticipation and expectation for this team. And Saturday is the first chance that people have to see it. So I understand why people might want to go to this one as opposed to, a typical year.
Yeah, I mean, I think the spring games typically, it's good if you get good weather and there's some sort of intrigue, whether a new coach or a quarterback competition, you get a good crowd. So they certainly might get a pretty good crowd. They had a pretty good crowd last year. It was almost 80,000 for the spring game, and that had maybe a little less drama with Devin Brown hurting his pinky to start the week. But still, that was still a chance for people to sort of see Kyle McCord. It really does feel like we're living in a world where we covered Ohio State last year. We talked so much about the quarterback competition, the offensive line, and we're going into the summer and eventually into training camp, the same questions. quarterback, offensive line. The exception in this case is I think there are more candidates or more people at least being looked at on the roster for quarterback than maybe a year ago. More people auditioning for the part, I guess. And we'll see if continuity helps them on the offensive line, where last year they didn't have continuity on the line. This year they have a little more continuity on the line, but it remains to be seen whether that's for better or for worse.
The other thing is this for, I don't know what the number is, but this will be the last time at the shoe for some Ohio State players, because the expectation is that there will be some that leave through the transfer portal starting next week. I think it's Tuesday is the day that it opens. The day is not expecting a wave of players, but we already know Dalvin Hayden is going to be one of them, the running back. There'll be others, and that's normal, and there's nothing wrong with that. That when they basically have their exit interviews from the spring, they're going to be told where they stand, and some of them may be told you might want to look elsewhere, and others may just not be happy with their perceived role and move on. And then the Ohio State could add. I mean, Ryan Day did not close the door to finding somebody for the offensive line. He was asked about that Wednesday, and he's not there yet, but he didn't rule it out. So this could be the last time for some players to play in the shoe. And look, the other thing about it is it's a great chance for a walk-on who probably won't play in the fall to get a chance to play in front of the biggest crowd he'll ever play in front of. And if he makes a catch at the end of the spring game, he can always hold on to that memory and say, hey, I made a touchdown and caught a touchdown in the shoe, or made a big interception in the shoe, or whatever it might be. So that part of it's always kind of cool.
Yeah, and important for the kids to go to the spring game and see if the 6-year-old has endurance to sit through.
They don't, because at halftime there's a mass exodus. I've had enough, Daddy.
Oh, maybe that's why Fox came and wanted to do the broadcast, because they were going to help with that by adding some more TV timeouts and really prepare like the children
prepare for life.
Sitting through that 2-minute TV timeout, and the red vest goes on the 15-yard line, and you're just left in the stands waiting.
Well, they should that's they want to be really realistic. They should start the game at 9:00 at night. Make it last until midnight. Their kid either be sleep deprived or go to bed at halftime.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, we will. I think we'll do something after the game Saturday, after the scrimmage on Saturday. We'll do a video or whatever, and obviously we'll have more analysis next week or whatever after the spring game. But it ought to be fun.
Yeah, enjoy it. I think it should be a little more compelling than what we saw last year with a muted end to the spring chapter of that quarterback competition. Visit us, dispatch.com/sports over the next few days for more coverage in the lead up to the spring game. Thanks for listening, everybody, and making the Buckeye Extra Football Podcast part of your listening diet.
Be sure and subscribe to the Buckeye Extra Podcast in the iTunes Store, the Google Play Store, or on Stitcher.
Just going to run this dog to see if we can find any type of human remains that are left.
Listen to Where Secrets Go to Die, The Disappearance of Derek Hennigan. From the Detroit Free Press, a new podcast set in the woods of Michigan's Upper Peninsula. Available on Apple, Spotify, Freep.com, or wherever you get your podcasts.